to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe in the studios of our flagship station, Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. In addition today, as always, we're also joined on community television on Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T Channel 99 by Birmingham Area Municipal Access, as well as City Cable 15 out of Southfield. On other community television stations joining us each and every day as well, such as Orion Neighborhood Television, or ONTV, out of Lake Orion, where every day is a vacation, and in Waterford on the media network of Waterford on Channel 10 there as well. Find us online, civiccentertv.com. Click on our Watch Live link at the top of our homepage on your computer web browser, or on the left margin of your screen on our drop-down menu on your mobile phone. Click on Watch Live, and there magically we'll be live and you'll be watching us. You can also go to civiccentertv.com's Facebook pages as well. Civic Center TV's Facebook pages at Civic Center TV 15 and at Lakes FM. Also join us online on My Michigan TV, or as the kids call it, My. You can view us at mymytv.com. That is mymytv.com, where you can learn more information also about all their other programming from creators here in the state of Michigan about topics in the state of Michigan and about the Great Lakes State. And it is free to subscribe, and you can also find more information about where you can download the MyTV app on your smartphone and on your smart TV by, again, going to their website at mymytv.com, mymytv.com. You're also on the radio on 88.1 WBFH The Biff in the Birmingham, Bloomfield area and in Troy. Learn more information about that station and all of our other partnering TV, radio, and web outlets joining us every day on the Megacast by going to our website at civiccentertv.com/Megacast. There you will also find important information about all of our interviews and full episodes. You can click on our Watch Full Episodes link and click on our Watch Full Interviews link and view all of our content on demand whenever you would like, dating all the way back to our first episodes in March of 2020. Right next door to that, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. There you'll find important information about COVID-19 and our other top stories each and every day. But the most important information there is through the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and the Oakland County Health Division, where you can learn more about the Delta variant and other variants that are or will be popping up in the future as we continue through this pandemic. Learn more about our vaccines and vaccine boosters. Track the COVID-19 measures in your local area, in your hometown, in Oakland County, throughout the state of Michigan, and throughout the U.S. as well at that location, and learn more information about precautions that you can and should be taking to prevent the spread of COVID-19, which ones work, how effective they are. All of that is information you can get from these reliable resources, these trusted resources, these experts on the front lines in medical fields. They're doctors, they're epidemiologists, they're virologists. They know this information. They're the ones that you want to be learning this from. In addition, we have links to many of our local municipalities, such as the City of Troy and Rochester Hills, Bloomfield Hills, West Bloomfield, where you can find more information about how the COVID-19 pandemic is affecting your town, what precautions may be in place, what services may be modified, and more. And then we also post our top stories each and every day before our live shows from 10 a.m. to 12 noon on our website at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. And today's top story, a GOP bill to overview voter ID and impose restrictions on clerks is headed to Governor Whitmer's desk. A bill that would impose strict voter ID requirements on Michigan voters, as well as restrict election funding and ban election officials from mailing absentee ballots unsolicited to voters, will soon land on Governor Whitmer's desk. GOP lawmakers in the House approved the bill on Thursday on a 56-51 party line vote. They also voted on a bill that would lay out the steps voters must follow in order to ensure that their ballot counts if they do not comply with the new ID requirements, as well as a third bill that would eliminate the fee to obtain a state ID. Both bills also passed without support of any Democratic lawmakers. A free ID bill was sent to Governor Whitmer by the House, but the two other bills must undergo some final procedural steps in the state Senate before they can be presented to Governor Whitmer. Whitmer is expected to veto this legislation, of course, and that's even been reported as written to an email to the Free Press by Whitmer spokesperson Bobby Leddy that the legislation, quote, seeks to make it harder to vote, attempts to undermine trust in our government, or attacks voting rights will see a swift veto from the governor, end closed quote. Democratic lawmakers decried the bills as based on disinformation about the 2020 presidential election and said that it would disenfranchise voters. Quote, they're hideous, regressive, suppressive, and discriminatory, said Representative Amos O'Neill, who is a Democrat from Saginaw. Quote, audit after audit, lawsuit after lawsuit showed the same thing. We did have a secure election in 2020, end closed quote. Republicans defended the measures, saying they would boost confidence in elections. Quote, these measures are not discriminatory practices. They are not politically motivated, and they are not intended to suppress anyone's vote, said Representative Ann Boland, from a Republican from Brighton, who chairs the House Elections and Ethics Committee. Quote, they are intended to protect our elections and ensure that every single voter can vote securely, independently, safely, and securely, end closed quote. That also kind of just turns a blind eye to the fact that there has been less than a percentage, less than 1% of all votes that were cast in 2020 in the election here in the state of Michigan by a significant margin were fraudulent, and of those cases that were found to be fraudulent, they have all been prosecuted or are in the process of being prosecuted. So the systems that are at play currently, at least at face value, and we have to do more digging into that and more analysis to really say definitively, but just from the outside looking in, seem to be working pretty well. Continuing on, the bill SB 303 would eliminate the option for those voting in person who do not have a photo ID to sign an affidavit affirming their identity and vote normally. An affidavit that is a legal document that does make you subject to perjury if you are to lie in that document, similar to some of those affidavits that were sworn by alleged witnesses of voter fraud on the front lines of the 2020 election that people opposed to the results of the 2020 election then had used as evidence. If it's good for that, why isn't it good for proving truth in your identification? As a question that's also being presented from opposition to these bills. Voters requesting an absentee ballot would have to include their driver's license or state ID number, the last 4 digits of their social security number, or a copy of a photo ID with their absentee ballot application. Voters who do not comply with the new ID rules would be issued a provisional ballot that would not count unless a voter took additional steps to verify their identity. SB 304, which is tied to the voter ID bill, lays out the process. Within 6 days of the election, those issued provisional ballots would have to present an ID along with documentation verifying their address. If voters do not have a photo ID, they would have to provide a copy of their birth certificate or social security number, as well as documentation verifying their address. House Republicans also passed HB 5007, a bill that would eliminate the fee to obtain a state ID card. The bill would also require the Secretary of State's office to provide same-day service for those applying for a state ID card for the purpose of voting in an election, as well as those applying for an ID 3 days before an election on election day or 6 days after an election. It is tied to the strict voter ID bill. That bill would also prohibit election officials from accepting donations to fund election activities and equipment such as advertisements about an upcoming election, efforts to recruit poll workers, or drop boxes to return ballots. The bill appears to be written in a way that Michigan officials would not accept federal funding for elections unless the legislature or local governments appropriated it. The legislation would also bar the Secretary of State, city clerks, and government employees from mailing absentee ballot applications unless a voter specifically requests one. The bill mirrors proposed changes in the Secure MI Vote petition initiative that would bypass Whitmer's expected veto of the election bills. Last week, the sponsors of the initiative began collecting 340,047 signatures needed to introduce it to the legislature, which can enact it without Governor Whitmer's signature. That article from the Detroit Free Press on our website, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. Also making news from Bridge, Michigan magazine, a lawmaker says, quote, "We are going to fix," and closed quote, "Michigan's broken public records request law." Oh, it's about time. Michigan's transparency advocates, journalists, and citizen activists on Thursday shared horror stories of trying to navigate the state's public records request law that they say is broken. And it's not sharing scary stories in a spooky way, unless you really just think about the way that this information is open to the public and being prevented from getting to the public. Kind of a problem. Loopholes, exceptions, and vague language in Michigan's Freedom of Information Act allow the state and local governments to avoid accountability by denying, delaying, or rejecting requests for public documents, they say. Quote, "It creates for us a chilling effect where we have to decide what information is worth paying for and what information we simply can't afford," and close quote. That from Michigan Radio News Director Vincent Duffy, who told state lawmakers considering reforms earlier this week. The University of Michigan's NPR affiliate has used public records to review the results of lead testing in water systems, teacher certifications in schools, and most recently to confirm that former Detroit Police Chief James Craig was not a licensed officer. That is claimed by Duffy. Quote, "Sometimes this public information is provided easily, but more often than not, the information is difficult to get because of delays or denials and dollars," he said. Thursday's legislative hearing on Michigan's Freedom of Information Act was the first step in what will be a concentrated effort to try and, quote, "fix the law," according to House Oversight Chairperson Steve Johnson, a Republican from Wayland. There's no legislation yet, but lawmakers are listening and, quote, "We're going to do an overhaul," and closed quote, said Representative Johnson. The goal is to help, not just help journalists or entities with quote-unquote big pockets to access government documents that are produced with taxpayer funds and meant to be public, Johnson added. It is, quote, is to, quote, "make it easier for everyday citizens," end closed quote. Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer campaigned in 2018 on a promise to expand FOIA and support the 2019 legislation, but she has not done so voluntarily within her own office. The State House has repeatedly voted to subject the governor and lawmakers to public records requests, but the legislation has stalled in the Senate, and critics say there are still too many loopholes to be taken seriously. As lawmakers began crafting potential reforms, Representative David LeGrand urged colleagues to consider the practical implications of any legislation that they provide. Quote, "There is a fairly low threshold for making a FOIA request, and it does take up governmental time," said LeGrand, a Grand Rapids Democrat who has championed various transparency reforms in Lansing. He continued on, quote, "We want to be a little careful about imposing burdens on government that could have a trigger from any random citizen to make government do a whole lot of careful work on the front end for what may be a frivolous or non-critical issue," and closed quote, he said. Continuing on, Representative Johnson mentioned earlier said, quote, "The purpose of FOIA is to make government accountable to all people. You shouldn't need an attorney to know what your local unit of government is doing," and close quote. That entire article from Bridge, Michigan on our website, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus, including our final story on our website today. An economic agency leader defends jobless aid and workplace safety response. This from the Detroit News. Michigan's Labor and Economic Opportunity Director Susan Corbin defended the state's handling of record unemployment claims and workplace safety violations during the pandemic in response to questions from lawmakers. Corbin defended the actions of the agencies, but also acknowledged there is room for change and improvement at both. She noted the state posted a job opening Friday for the next director of the Unemployment Insurance Agency, which has been led by acting director Liza Estlin Olson since the former director resigned in November of 2020. Quote, "They just were absolutely hit with an unprecedented volume of claims," and close quote, Corbin told senators during her Thursday appointment hearing. Corbin, who was appointed acting director of LEO in October of 2020, was before the Senate Advice and Consent Committee for consideration of her August 20th appointment as permanent director. Corbin noted that the Jobless Aid Agency was tasked with implementing new federal COVID-19 programs, combating suspected fraudulent claims, and moving employees out of the office and into remote work arrangements, all while claims rose at historic rates. The situation, she said, was similar to, quote, "building the plane while we're trying to fly it," end close quote. Estlin Olsen was brought in to try and quote-unquote stabilize the agency after former director Steve Gray's departure, Corbin said. Estlin Olsen has worked to flatten the structure of the agency, brought in consultants to expand agency capacity and simplified language used in communicating with the public, Corbin said. The Jobless Department also is working to change software platforms as well. Still, the GOP-led legislature's criticism of Estlin Olsen has been ramping up, with House Republicans last week approving a resolution calling for her resignation. But Senator Ed McBroom, a Republican from Vulcan, asked Corbin what lasting changes could be made at the agency, noting the problems exacerbated by the pandemic had been present for several administrations. Quote, "This is an agency that's been plagued for years with problems," McBroom said. Employees and the public, as was said by Corbin, quote, deserve somebody who will take strong responsibility and will commit to spending time with the agency. That is something that, from my perspective, would be very helpful. Senator Eric Nesbitt, the Lawton Republican who chairs the Senate Advice and Consent Committee, also criticized the agency's quote-unquote heavy hand during the pandemic and questioned training the department held on how to form a union. Corbin said the training was an effort, quote, to tackle an issue we got lots of calls about, in close quote. And a quote from Representative Nesbitt, from Senator Nesbitt, quote, "Does the administration tilt the playing field in favor of unions," in closed quote, noting Governor Whitmer's recent announcement that she would reimpose the prevailing wage on some state work. Corbin said she didn't know how to respond to the question. She noted members of the administration have, quote, "strong experiences," in closed quote, with unions, and her own mother and father were union members. Quote, "This administration, perhaps more than the previous administration, has strong ties to unions in Michigan," Corbin said. Continuing on, Corbin also said, "We understand the values and appreciate what unions in Michigan have done for workers in this state." So yeah, still continuing issues with the UIA, with the Unemployment Insurance Agency, issues that are still in the process of being fixed. And of course, there's going to be a lot of oversight from our legislature and from new leadership in how to fix those problems going forward, because a lot of the problems that were identified and that became such major issues during the pandemic were issues before the pandemic. They just weren't getting as much of a limelight. Read all of those articles on our website, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus, where you will also find information from the Centers for Disease Control, the state of Michigan, Oakland County, and other resources in your local area as well. We're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we got a packed Friday edition of the Megacast ahead for you. At 10:20, I'll be speaking with Rochelle Riley, the Director of Arts and Culture at the Office of Arts, Culture, and Entrepreneurship at the City of Detroit, and the author of That They Lived. She'll be making a speaking appearance here in the greater West Bloomfield area coming up in the coming weeks, and we'll talk to her about that and more. Then, at 10:40, Dr. Tobias Walbert from the Neuro-Oncology Department at Henry Ford Health System and a brain tumor specialist himself, he will join us on the program. In the 11 o'clock hour, the Michigan Science Center's Director of Programs, Anna Sterner, will join us on the show at 11:20. Dawn Kepler from Michigan State University's Collegiate Recovery Community will join us. And then we'll cap off this week's show with Travis Walter and cast members from Clue on stage at Meadowbrook Theater. That is all coming up next. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
A message from the staff of Michigan's Crime Victim Compensation Program.
Anyone can be a victim of crime
and suffer lasting trauma, physically, emotionally, and financially.
But you are not alone.
If you're struggling financially due to a crime,
we're here
for you. Find out if you qualify for crime victim compensation. Call 877-251-7373 or visit michigan.gov/crime-victim.
A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Victim Services.
You see certain things get reincarnated in your children. My daughter is very much inspired by my wife's artistic pursuits. So my daughter started making necklaces. She makes what we call affirmation fashion. I tell her every day that your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. And if there's anything better than being beautiful, it's being smart. And if there's anything better than being smart, it's being kind. And reaffirming that every day is our method of making sure her chin never drops. My dad wasn't around, and I remember riding a bike and falling off and cutting myself, and me never just wanting to get back on it. People ask, how your children learn how to ride a bike, and you didn't. I didn't teach them. I just created an environment where they taught themselves, and all I had to do was be there.
Whether you're the city,
the county,
or the Huron River Watershed Council.
As partners working together to protect our water resources, we agree.
Pet waste is a source of harmful bacteria in the Huron River.
When it's left on the ground, it can wash into the storm drains.
These lead directly to our streams. No filters, no treatment.
Here's one thing we know that can help keep our water clean.
Pick up pet waste and trash it.
Pick up pet waste and trash it.
So pick up pet waste and trash it.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
Who is struggling right now?
I am.
My son is.
Many are struggling with anxiety, depression, and substance use. Before it becomes a crisis, reach out to MyCal, the Michigan Crisis and Access Line for free confidential support 24/7. Available in the Upper Peninsula and Oakland County. Just call or text 1-844-44-MyCal or chat online at michigan.gov/MyCal. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Welcome back to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe here in our studios in West Bloomfield Township, where we broadcast live from 10 a.m. to 12 noon all across the state of Michigan, Monday through Friday on the Megacast. Learn more about our show, about all of our partnering media outlets throughout the state of Michigan, and find all of our interviews and our full episodes on demand on our website at civiccentertv.com/Megacast, or just go to our website and click on the Megacast link. We'll start off today's show, and I'm pleased to be joined now by Rochelle Riley. She is the Director of Arts and Culture at the Office of Arts, Culture, and Entrepreneurship for the City of Detroit, and the author of That They Lived. Rochelle, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate having you back on the show. So we have coming up in a couple of weeks, not next week, but the week after, on Thursday, October 28th, you'll be a guest speaker at Spazita's Restaurant in West Bloomfield for the Rotary Club of West Bloomfield and West Bloomfield Public Library's speaking event called A Frank Conversation About Race. So just give us a little bit of a preview about what you will be discussing with the audience at that event on October 28th.
Thank you so much, and I'm honored to be on your show again. I was asked by these two entities who work so hard on relationships and do great work in West Bloomfield to talk a little bit about what people are finally starting to talk about across the country and have been for the past year since George Floyd was murdered. And it's just how we're living with each other or not living with each other and finally seeing each other in some cases for the first time. So we're going to talk about whatever people want to talk about. It will be a conversation. But I want to remind people of two things. One is that we cannot hide the history of America to feel better or to, pretend like it didn't happen. And enslavement still impacts, the vestiges of that still impact how many African Americans live. And also that there's so much to celebrate about African American history that we should not be relegating it to 1 month a year, but should teach that all the time. And I think it will change the way kids grow up looking at each other and the adults that they become.
We're joined by Rochelle Riley. She's the Director of Arts and Culture at the Office of Arts, Culture, and Entrepreneurship for the City of Detroit. She'll be making a speech on October 28th at Spazita's Restaurant in West Bloomfield with the Rotary Club of West Bloomfield and the West Bloomfield Township Public Library. You can still get tickets to that event, but those tickets are going quickly, so get them as soon as you can, as that event continues to fill up quite quickly. And Rochelle, there is that quote that's kind of a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason because it's meaningful and it resonates. And that is that those that don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And part of having a conversation like this, about having a frank conversation about race, is that if we don't learn from the history, if we don't identify the parts of our history, the not so lovely parts of our country's history, particularly as it pertains to race, which most of that does, in this case, pertain to race. Most of those not so lovely parts of our American history here do pertain to race. If we're not identifying those and speaking critically about them and speaking about how far we've come and how far we still need to go, we're ultimately doomed to continue to make those same mistakes and be circling back to this point again and again and again, as we have been doing since this country's onset.
Well, the sad thing about racism in America is that we have never really changed. We've just adapted. So there's always been some sense of first and second class citizenship in this country. And what's really sad is if after the Civil War, America had embraced what was happening with Reconstruction, when there were Black senators and people were treated, equally, we would have a whole different America. But of course, hate rose then, and there were people who did not want Black Americans to succeed the same way as white Americans. And so you wound up with every effort to make sure there was some semblance of an enslavement system, second-class citizenship. And that's what led to Jim Crow laws that a lot of young people are not even learning about now. We have in America been teaching this myth of America, that this country was founded on theft and torture. This land was taken from indigenous folks who were already here. And then you had almost 250 years of free labor that built this country. And the idea that we don't teach that because it might make someone feel bad or it might make us look bad. We've been teaching a sort of separate America. We have instilled that into how we have done our American narrative, and it's got to change. And one of the things that worries me is this rise in opportunities to teach about Black history and it being called critical race theory and people trying to ban it. They don't want to talk about enslavement. One prominent newspaper publisher said that, it might harm some of the efforts that are going on to atone for enslavement. And I'm like, what is he talking about? What are these things that he's talking about? So it's time for America to be honest with itself so that we can finally live a different lifestyle, live a different way, and be more caring to each other about what has gone on in the past, and also to just be a better country. If everybody is given the opportunity to succeed at their best, there are no limits.
We're joined by Rochelle Riley. She's the Director of Arts and Culture at the Office of Arts, Culture, and Entrepreneurship for the City of Detroit. She is also the author of That They Live, and she will be speaking on October 28th. That's a Thursday morning at 7:30 a.m. at Spasita's Restaurant in West Bloomfield in partnership with the Rotary Club of West Bloomfield, as well as the West Bloomfield Township Public Library. And what's really important going into the conversation for anybody that is attending, and for those that maybe aren't able to attend for one reason or another, but are also considering these issues that affect America and American history in its relation to race, and it is directly related to racial issues in every single category and from every single angle. The question that needs to be asked, regardless of your walk of life here in the American world, is whether or not it's better to identify the problems, to take a less fanciful look at the history of this country and make improvements and become a better country, or to continue to gloss over those major issues, those humanitarian issues, those moral issues, ethical issues that have plagued this country since day one, and avoid resolving those issues. Because if you don't identify an issue, if you don't critically analyze an issue and discuss it from both those that are perpetuating it intentionally or not, and those who are affected by it, then no solutions can truly be made. And we end up in a situation kind of like we are now, where we're circling back to discussing ways that quote-unquote voter suppression laws across this country, including here in the state of Michigan, may affect people in the communities that are at a significant disadvantage and aren't able to obtain photo IDs and other required affects in order to be able to vote, which is also an issue that relates to race as well.
So do you want me to address voter suppression or ways people are discriminated against?
Sure, because that's one of the many issues that this conversation certainly would relate to.
Well, what has been odd and what is never talked about is how many times we've amended the law, amended the Constitution to make sure we're no longer breaking it. We should not have to have voter Voting Rights Acts. The 1965 Voting Rights Act is the way that so many people in my history and in my family were allowed to vote. So while some women celebrate suffrage from 1920, that doesn't apply to most Black women. And the idea that we now have a rise in every effort in numerous states to try to keep people from voting. It's one of the most un-American things I have ever seen. And I think that by the time you look at the different ways that people are harmed, whether it's, we went from during enslavement, it was illegal to teach Black Americans to read. Now, there are efforts to not give Black kids the same education as white kids. I think what we've done is really just sort of ingrained segregation and discrimination into the way our country operates. And we have to change that in every form, whether it's with law enforcement or whether it's with education or whether it's with history. If we take an honest look at ourselves, then we can better ourselves.
We're joined by Rochelle Riley. She is the Director of Arts and Culture at the Office of Arts, Culture, and Entrepreneurship with the City of Detroit. She is also the author of That They Lived, which she had released last February. And Rochelle, for those that didn't watch our episode or your interview when you were on with us previously to talk about That They Lived, tell us a little bit about the origins of that book, because it has a really interesting backstory that led you into writing that.
Well, thank you for asking about that. My first book, The Burden, came out in 2018, but that year that I was working on it in 2017, I went online, as I do every day because I'm a social media junkie, and I saw these beautiful portraits of a little girl who was embodying the spirit of and dressed as famous, iconic African-American women. And I was just enamored, and I thought, that's so awesome. But I was on deadline on The Burden, so I didn't do anything. That was all of February. There's a picture, a new picture every day. Well, when The Burden came out in 2018, I looked online, and lo and behold, there they were again, this little girl embodying Shirley Chisholm and Aretha Franklin, and just amazing and important women, and I thought, I have got to find out who this is. So I found the Seattle homemaker who was an amateur photographer who posted these pictures, and I said, I love what you're doing. What made you do this? She said, I wanted to teach my daughter about African-American history, and this was a way to do it. And I said, well, a picture is worth 1,000 words. I bet I can do 1,000 words on every one of these women that your daughter is portraying. And she said, oh no, I could never do that. And I said, of course you can. And she didn't want to. She just thought that was something that was too big. So I got on a plane and flew to Seattle and got in a car and drove to Kent, Washington, and took her family to lunch and said, please let me do this book. So she agreed. And with those photographs, what we're doing is trying to show every child that every famous person, every important person was once a child. So each of these inspirational essays that I wrote begins with what those famous people were doing at that moment in their childhood where you knew their lives had changed. It's Muhammad Ali deciding to learn to box at 12 because someone stole his bike, or Shirley Chisholm having to be sent to another country to learn because they couldn't afford to live near the one school she could go to, or Thurgood Marshall, probably the greatest attorney in the history of America, who argued 32 cases before the U.S. Supreme Court and won 29 of them. As a boy, his father would take him to court with him so he could understand how the court system worked. He didn't tell him to become a lawyer, but he sure made it easy. So that's what those stories are about. And the pictures of these kids, as Duke Ellington and Martin Luther King and Stevie Wonder and Fannie Lou Hamer are just lovely and important for all kids to know.
It's a really interesting piece, and you'll be able to get a copy of That They Lived, African Americans Who Changed the World, when you go and attend Rochelle's speaking event with the West Bloomfield Rotary and the West Bloomfield Township Public Library. That is next week. That is 2 weeks from yesterday. That's Thursday, October 28th at 7:30 a.m. at Spazito's Restaurante in West Bloomfield. Register online at westbloomfieldrotary.org. And Rochelle, since you released that book, what has been the reaction from those that have read it, that have purchased the book, and have experienced those stories through this unique perspective?
Well, it has been stunning and quite humbling. Some school districts are using it for their classes. One professor at Vanderbilt who teaches how to teach early education is a part of their, teacher program. She's using it as a part of the curriculum to teach teachers how to teach literature to young kids. But the most important reaction came from my grandson, Caleb, who was the boy who portrayed all the men in the book. when I sent it to his house. I didn't ask him what he thought. I asked his mom and said, just tell me if he looks at it and reads it or if he just puts it aside. And she said he sat down and read the entire essay on Muhammad Ali and said, oh man, that was cool. So that was the reaction I wanted, and that was the one that was most important. But I have heard from so many people that this is something that's needed for kids to learn some of these histories of people who should be a part of their history classes anyway.
We're joined by Rochelle Riley. She's the Director of Arts and Culture at the Office of Arts, Culture, and Entrepreneurship for the City of Detroit. She's also the author of That They Lived, and you will be able to get a copy of that book when you purchase tickets to attend her speaking event with the West Bloomfield Rotary Club and the West Bloomfield Township Public Library Thursday, October 28th at 7:30 a.m. Tickets are $25 each, and you can get them at westbloomfieldrotary.org. And Rochelle, as the Director of Arts and Culture at the Office of Arts, Culture, and Entrepreneurship for the City of Detroit, I want to give you a few minutes while we're at the tail end of this interview to talk about the nation's largest 3D mural in Detroit that calls attention to hunger issues in African American communities. Tell us a little bit about this art piece and about the story behind it.
Well, the United Nations and its longtime program to end world hunger worked with artists to choose 6 or 7 cities across the country to host these murals. They're huge. This one is on the side of the Frank Murphy Courthouse, which is, like stories and stories of space. And what they're doing is finding ways to make sure people understand that hunger should not be a problem in America, especially in African American communities. So the artists have been working on that. They're going to finish it in about a week, and it's stunning, but it has a purpose, as a lot of murals do, and that's to make sure that we pay attention to the fact that there are children in this country who literally are without food. And there are great programs like Forgotten Harvest in Detroit that work on that problem, but it's something we should all be concerned about. So we were so thrilled to have that piece of art to come to Detroit. It's no different than when we celebrated the singer Aaliyah, who died tragically 20 years ago. Detroit was one of 9 cities around the world that was chosen to host honors to her. And we shot videos of her on the side of City Hall, which had never been done before, but also had an Aaliyah drone show at Irma Henderson Park downtown. And you can see that on clickondetroit.com, because we partnered with Local 4 to live stream that to folks so they didn't have to come out. We're still aware of the pandemic.
And of course, the largest 3D mural in the city of Detroit is calling attention to hunger issues within African American communities in our local area and throughout the country as well. And those are issues that also tie back to the racial tensions and racial disparities and, frankly, injustices throughout the entirety of our United States history that Rochelle will be speaking about at her speaking event on Thursday, October 28th at 7:30 a.m. at Spazita's Restaurante in West Bloomfield. That is in partnership with the West Bloomfield Township Public Library and the Rotary Club of West Bloomfield. You can purchase tickets for $25. It includes a breakfast buffet and a signed copy of Rochelle's book, That They Lived, African Americans Who Changed the World. And be part of that conversation and purchase your tickets by going to westbloomfieldrotary.org. Rochelle, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it, and we look forward to your conversation with the community and with the West Bloomfield Rotary Club and Library that, of course, as I said before, you can get your tickets for and get them quickly because they're going very quickly. That is what the Rotary Club of West Bloomfield tells me. So get them as soon as you can for that 7:30 event in the morning on October 28th at Spazita's Restaurante on 14 Mile Road in West Bloomfield Township. Again, to purchase tickets, go to westbloomfieldrotary.org. We're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we will go over to Henry Ford Health System, and we'll be speaking with Dr. Tobias Walbert. He is a neuro-oncology expert and a brain tumor specialist with Henry Ford Health System. We'll speak to him next on the Megacast.
I couldn't breathe at all. There was lots of talk about putting me on a ventilator. I thought I was going to die. I was 39 weeks pregnant and had a scheduled C-section. During that time, I got COVID and was hospitalized for a month. I had a blood clot in my lungs. It caused me to go into right-sided heart failure. I was really scared. I kept texting my husband and my mom, telling them how scared I was, and I was worried that he was gonna grow up without a mom. And then I was worried when I did get home, that he wouldn't know who I was. you know, being 27 and a mom and a wife and having that all almost taken away from me. It's scary, and if a vaccine can prevent that from happening, why not? Get your vaccine. I don't want this to happen to anybody else.
Motorcyclists are hard to see. To keep everyone safer, it's important to always look for them and know where most crashes occur. 84% of motorcycle and vehicle crashes happen on streets, not highways. And most crashes with motorcyclists occur when vehicle drivers are turning left. So before turning, especially to the left, make sure you look for motorcyclists. Then look again. It could save a life.
To Sofia and Gabriel. Even though these old knees can't follow on your adventure to the forest today, these flowers represent my love. These stitches and threads join us together. And wherever you see a flower, a bird, a beautiful tree, know that my love is with you.
Make the forest part of your story at a park near you. Find one at discovertheforest.org.
Welcome back to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe alongside Calvin Brown, our studio producer and board operator, in our studios at West Bloomfield Township's Green Media Center on the campus of Chico Elementary, but we broadcast all throughout the state of Michigan. Learn more about everywhere that we broadcast live and live to tape on our website, civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you can also find all of our interviews on demand at any time, civiccentertv.com/megacast. We recently had an interview with a man named Eric Goldstein, who created a one-man show on YouTube called Here We Go. And for context, in early 2020, Eric Goldstein saw his doctor about a routine vision problem and walked away with a diagnosis that would change his life when he was diagnosed with glioblastoma, a brain tumor. And we're joined by one of his doctors, Dr. Tobias Walbert. He is from the neuro-oncology department at Henry Ford Health System, and he is a brain tumor specialist. Joining us now on the Megacast, Dr. Walbert, thanks for being with us today.
My pleasure. Hello.
Thank you for being with us. We appreciate it. So tell us a little bit about glioblastoma and what makes it such a challenging form of cancer for doctors to treat.
Yeah, so glioblastoma is the most common brain tumor. And by that, this is like that originates in the brain. So there are many other, like what we call metastases from other cancers going to the brain. But glioblastoma is the number one that originates in the brain. And it basically evolves from some cells that we all have, that we all need. And something goes wrong with their inflammation and they start growing, which they shouldn't. And all of a sudden you have 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and you have a tumor growing there. And so what sets brain tumors and a little bit apart, these gliomas, is that they're in the brain. And the brain is a very, I'm joking, is a very boring organ. Or who likes it to be boring and wants it all to be stable. So it's like hidden behind what we call the blood-brain barrier that makes sure that no poison, nothing that shouldn't be there is getting to the brain. But that makes it very difficult to treat as well. The brain has its own immune system. That means it's very difficult for the immune system to detect these cells that shouldn't be there and to destroy them. And the other challenges is there are a lot of parts of the brain that are really, really important and make us who we are. And so you cannot just take out things and have no consequences. So put all of that together, it makes it very challenging, but as well as rewarding. That's what we do.
We're joined by Dr. Tobias Walbert. He is from the neuro-oncology department at Henry Ford Health System. He is a brain tumor specialist, joining us talking about glioblastoma. And Dr. Walbert, you said that this is a highly common form of a brain tumor. It has its origins in some inflammation in the brain. Are there certain risk factors that are out there that make it so common, or are there risk factors that people should be aware of, or maybe trying to actively avoid, if possible, that may put them at risk for developing a glioblastoma?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and that comes a lot of times because, of course, people want to make sure and want to know what might have caused it. But while there's some very rare forms of genetic underpinnings, and by that I mean hereditary forms, it is very, very rare. And we do not have a good understanding what is causing it. So I always tell people we don't know what if you did anything the wrong way or should have done the other way. Like for example, like a common question is about cell phone use. Yeah, but no, we do not have any good data about that. There are some other tumors called meningiomas where actually radiation is a risk factor, but not for the glioblastomas. So no, there is no specific testing, and to the relief of many of our patients, there is nothing that we are aware of that their children or other family members have to be on higher alert, and there is no specific gene we are testing for that could be inherited to other family members. So we don't know what is happening, but yeah, it's just like basically there are so-called like tumor suppressor genes. It's basically, these are genes that everyone has and needs that basically tell cells to stop growing, and something happens like in an evolutionary process that switches one off, and all of a sudden the cell starts growing, and there we go.
So Dr. Walbert, you mentioned some of the risk factors that may lead to a glioblastoma. Are there certain demographics of our population, either by age, either by sex or gender, or by lifestyle, that are more at risk for developing these?
Again, like risk, we see two peaks. We see one in the younger, like in the 2030s, and that is certainly is a different genetic underpinning. And then the most patients are somewhere between 60 and 80. That is like the second peak. Yeah, and you see that like even on the bigger scale represented. There's like people that are, well, might be known to your viewers that had a glioblastoma, but like John McCain, Ted Kennedy, the former senator from Massachusetts, and then on the younger end, Beau Biden, President Biden's son. Yeah.
We're joined by Dr. Tobias Walbert. He is from the neuro-oncology department at Henry Ford Health System, and he is a brain tumor specialist. We previously had one of his patients on, Eric Goldstein, who saw his doctor in early 2020 because he had some vision problems, and then was diagnosed with glioblastoma, and that inspired him to create a YouTube one-man show called Here We Go. And so before we bring Eric in, because we do have him on the show as well, Dr. Walbert, when did you first meet Eric Goldstein?
Wow, this is a good question. It's probably a better one to ask Eric, because he will remember that much more. Like I do remember, and what is really interesting is it's like this all happened during COVID. So it actually took like quite a while, and until I met Eric in person. It's like just recently. Before that, like we had this virtual medicine, telemedicine relationship, and as he's quite tech savvy, and it worked out very well. And but the first encounter, we have to ask Eric.
And so Eric is with us on the show as well. Eric Goldstein, who has been previously with us, and his show, Here We Go. So Eric, tell us a little bit about that experience. We talked a little bit about it the last time you were on the show, but give us a little bit more insight on on how you were going through this process and what it was like going through this process of treating your glioblastoma, of going through the diagnosis process and learning more about this brain tumor with the help of Dr. Walbert and others on your team of doctors. What was it like going through that during the pandemic and not being able to meet your doctors in a more traditional way and an in-person way and have that more typical interaction with them when you're going through something as traumatic as finding out you have a brain tumor?
Well, understand that the means of discovering the brain tumor was through an MRI, and that was in person.
Yeah,
you can't do that remotely. But then all the communications about the MRI findings and what we needed to do about it, that was all remote via phone and so forth, and using Henry Ford Health System's MyChart system. The surgery couldn't be done at Henry Ford because they had no capacity to do it because of COVID care. This was in April of 2020. But as they say, they knew a guy over in Grand Rapids that wasn't swamped with COVID yet, and arrangements were made to get me over there urgently. And the surgery was done there. And we had a very smooth transition of care back to Henry Ford when the surgery was done. And I remember being on the couch in the post-surgical recovery phase, and I got a phone call or a Zoom meeting. I forget exactly how it was set up with Dr. Walbert. I'm a mess. You know, I've just come back from the hospital. My hair is in all these weird places from the surgical procedure. I'm literally a mess. And he is going, "Hello, Eric. You look so good today. How are you doing? I'm Dr. Walbert." And we had a lovely conversation. And he said, "Oh no, I'm used to seeing you and people like you. You're fine." Dr. Walbert has instilled such great confidence from the very beginning. I did not feel deprived of care because we were doing it remotely. He's an excellent communicator, answered all the questions, was very patient with us because you might imagine we had lots of questions, and he absorbed them all over time and answered them the best as he could and was very helpful to us. So I would say I liked not having to spend all the time driving and parking and trying to get. That was at a time when I couldn't really even walk. I could only shuffle and for short distances. So I actually think we had a better experience because we could do it remotely.
And of course, Eric, we've talked previously about how your one-man show on YouTube, Here We Go, which premiered earlier this month. It premiered on October 2nd. It's still, of course, available on YouTube. For those of you that are interested, just search Eric Goldstein, Here We Go, and you'll be able to see his show on YouTube. And so, it's been almost 2 weeks now. It's been just a little under 2 weeks since that has been released. Have you gotten any response so far on the program from people that have viewed it, from those that have maybe shared it themselves? Any response so far 2 weeks in after releasing it?
I've been contacted by other glioblastoma families and advised that that show gave them the vocabulary that they lacked, that they wanted to talk about things, complicated and difficult things, but they couldn't find ways to talk about it. And this show gave them the tools to do that. I've also been contacted by people not afflicted by glioblastoma and been told that our story of love and hope and looking the situation in the eye has been very helpful for them as they struggle with the burdens and complications that they have in their lives. It's been very gratifying to see that we've been able to offer some support and help to others.
Of course, Eric Goldstein's show, Here We Go, is available on YouTube. It premiered on October 2nd. It is still available, of course, on YouTube by searching Eric Goldstein, Here We Go, and you'll be able to see that entire show that has been providing a whole lot of optimism to glioblastoma families, as well as Eric just said, to those that aren't afflicted with glioblastoma or are dealing with someone in their life, a loved one, a family member, a friend, or anybody else that has glioblastoma. It's just been something inspirational about it that has changed their perspective on life. So there's a lot of optimism that's come from that. So Eric, thank you very much. Going back to Dr. Walbert, Dr. Tobias Walbert from the Neuro-Oncology Department at Henry Ford Health System. He's a brain tumor specialist. What are the latest advancements in the treatment of brain tumors such as glioblastoma, as opposed to several years ago or decades ago, that maybe hopefully can provide more optimism or more quality of life at the very least to those patients who do experience a glioblastoma?
Yeah, one of the big things we do at Henry Ford is a lot of research. Like, we're trying to offer every patient the opportunity to participate in a clinical trial or in a study, helping to further discover what's next and what we can do. I'm very optimistic about the future. Like, the recent years has been really more focused on discovering the underpinnings, the molecular mechanisms, why do some tumors grow and come back while others do not. And based on that, we are developing new trials that are really targeting these molecular mechanisms. So we realize that that there is no one fix for everyone. And so that's what we do with a lot of these new clinical trials. Other things, what we have been working on, and that came more into focus, is a new device. It's called tumor treating fields. That is actually something that Eric is wearing. It's like basically applies an electric field to where the brain tumor was that inhibits the cells from growing. It's like some big band-aids on it. And that has been shown to meaningfully increase survival. And while we are unfortunately still short of the silver bullet, there have been many advances as well in surgery, and that's the first big step. And so at Henry Ford, we have had the first intraoperative MRIs years ago, and then we established something called tumor paint. It's like a special dye or juice that patients drink before the surgery that makes the tumor more visible under the special microscope for the surgeons. And now a new phase that we are working on is like looking at how like a special radiation tile can be implanted when patients undergo surgery when a tumor is coming back. So we work on all different kinds of levels. One of my personal quests is about how we can improve care for patients in the palliative or end-of-life setting. How can we improve communications with families? How can we enable families and patients to have conversations that we all should be having about what do we want in life, what do we do not want. And that, I think, was very eye-opening to see Eric's piece. It's because he's so point on, and to see what goes on in the mind of a patient. Yeah.
We're joined by we're joined by Dr. Tobias Walbert. He is a brain tumor specialist in the Neuro-Oncology Department at Henry Ford Health System, as well as Eric Goldstein, who is a glioblastoma patient and is the producer of Here We Go, a one-man show about his experiences and the life lessons he's learned through his battle with glioblastoma. Dr. Walbert, Eric, thank you very much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it. And Dr. Walbert, just one last question before we say goodbye today. For those out there who are watching this who maybe curious or want to be extra cautious because this is such a common form of a brain tumor, what should people be aware of as maybe some symptoms that they could be potentially afflicted with this form of a brain tumor? Or what can they do to assure themselves that they are properly protecting themselves from this danger, or at least getting out in front of it as soon as possible?
Yeah, of course. So the brain, I always say, it's like real estate. It's location, location, location. So it really depends on what part of your brain is afflicted, and that can cause. Many patients present first with a seizure. So yeah, if you have a seizure, you do end up in the emergency room, and that is quite common. Or if there is like a weakness on one side that is not going away, first thought, of course, is always stroke. And so you always want to be in the emergency room and call 911 as soon as possible when something like that happened, a sudden weakness, sudden speech, and then go from there. Sometimes, but not as often, headaches can be a sign, but that, again, it's not as common as people might think. I always tell my patients, remember, the brain does not feel pain, so there are no pain receptors in the brain itself. They are on the coverings of the brain. So it really depends. Any of these symptoms, you work with your primary care doctor, and you come in, and I know there has been a lot of reluctance, of course, like with the most recent COVID developments. But like, for example, at Henry Ford, we were one of the first health systems where everybody has to be vaccinated. So we create a safe environment for everyone to come in and to get the treatment that they need.
Well, Dr. Walbert, appreciate it, and same to you, Eric. Appreciate both of your time today to reopen this conversation we've had previously with Eric, but also inform the public about this common form of a brain tumor, what risk factors are out there for people to potentially develop it, some of the experiences in learning about this brain tumor and treating this brain tumor, as well as some optimism as well with great research that's being done in many health systems, including Henry Ford, right here in our local area. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. We're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we will transition into the second hour of the program, and we'll be joined by Anna Sterner of the Michigan Science Center. She's their director of programs, and they're about to get spooky over there. We're about to get explosive on this show next after the break. We're going to have some seasonal items. We'll be talking about some scientific experiments that they will be performing there at the Michigan Science Center, and we're going to blow up a pumpkin. But we're going to do it safely. We're going to do it legally. It's a family show. That's all coming up next in the second hour of the Megacast.
It's the Great Lakes water, and so what people do ends up in our waterways.
Flushable wipes are just evil. They should be thrown away. They're impossible to destroy, and they can cause significant problems.
One of the main things when you're cooking is to not dump fats, oils, and greases down your drains.
They stick to the sides of pipes. They stick to everything they come in contact with. Don't put it down the sink.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. When you don't know where to turn, let 211 be your guiding light.
How can I help you?
Our guides are ready to connect you with the help you need. For help with food, healthcare, mental health, and other resources, call 211 or visit 211.org. 211. Get connected, get help.
we may come from different organizations.
But we work together to protect the Huron River for everyone.
Neighborhood storm drains carry water directly to local creeks and streams. No filters, no treatment.
Storm drains also help reduce street flooding when it rains.
So clearing storm drains and the areas nearby of trash and leaves helps keep them for rain only.
It is easy to do your part by adopting a storm drain.
Find a storm drain, check it, and clear it every month.
So keep storm drains for rain only.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
Welcome back to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Kieft alongside Calvin Brown here in our studios at Green Media Center on the campus of Chico Elementary School in West Bloomfield Township, but we're broadcasting all across the state of Michigan on civiccentertv.com/megacast. You can learn more about all of those places that do broadcast us live and live to tape and replay us throughout the day as well, and find all of our interviews, including a very spooky interview we have coming up now with the Michigan Science Center's Director of Programs, Anna Sterner. They have some new Halloween-themed programming that's coming up Saturday, October 16th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And what's even scarier about it is that it's free and open to the public. We're now joined by Anna on the program. Anna, thanks for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
So tell us about the truly horrifying experiences that are ahead for those looking for a scary but scientific weekend of fun here in Michigan.
Yeah, super spooky stuff, right? So we are celebrating Halloween a little bit early this year, but we love this time of year because October is Halloween. It is one of my favorite months of the year, but it's also National Chemistry Month. So in honor of that and in honor of this spooky season, BASF actually sponsors an annual free day so that people can come to the Science Center absolutely for free with their family and do some hands-on chemistry and watch us do all sorts of spooky Halloween, but also definitely science-themed stuff around the building. So that is this Saturday. We do have a limited number of free tickets available that people can still reserve if they visit our website. So if you go to the Michigan Science Center's website or visit us on any of our social media channels, you can find a link to those limited number of free tickets that are still available because that is this Saturday, so tomorrow.
Yeah, it's coming out quickly, and if you want to get those tickets, you want to learn more information, as Anna said, they're going in quickly. There's only a limited amount of free tickets that are being provided through support from BASF, and you can find those tickets on the Michigan Science Center's website at mi-sci or mi-sci.org and learn more about all the programming they have coming up on that free day on Saturday, October 16th. That is tomorrow from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. And Anna, what are some of the programs that will be available at this free day over there at the Michigan Science Center?
Yeah, so it's all chemistry all the time this weekend. And so we have a really awesome stage show that's going to happen on our main science stage. It's our main theater. You can't miss it when you're here in the building. And we're doing a show that we call Creepy Chemistry or Extreme Pumpkin Carving. We love this show because instead of carving up these pumpkins like you might normally do at home, we are going to carve them up using some pretty cool chemical reactions. And so I brought a couple of them with me today if you want to check them out.
Absolutely, yes. Let's go through it.
All right. We'll get started with the first one, but since we said this is chemistry, a little bit of lab safety materials required here, so I'm going to go ahead and drop down my goggles. BASF sponsors these kids' labs at the Science Center and sponsors this day to talk about chemistry, and they really want to spread the word about the importance of lab safety as well. So the experiment that I'm about to do is a little bit dangerous. This is not one of those hands-on activities that people will try while they're here. Yeah. Definitely want to watch this one from a safe distance, or hey, virtually works too, right? But we've got some pretty hazardous chemicals that we're going to use for these experiments. In my first one, we call this one the genie in a pumpkin. So this pumpkin's been growing all year, and we actually trapped a genie inside. And our goal here is just to get it out. How do you normally get a genie out of a bottle? Are you familiar?
Yeah, you got to rub the bottle, right?
Yeah, let's go ahead and just give that a try, right? Okay. Give it a little rub. Not seeing much. Let's go ahead and take a peek inside. Maybe we can figure out what's going on. And
whoa,
look at that.
Oh my, yeah, the genie is loose now.
Deal.
Oh boy.
The genie is loose, right? Something's going on.
Yeah.
Now, we definitely don't want to be spreading the word that this might be magic, right? Because we're all about science here. So there is something scientific going on. We see some sort of reaction taking place. And if you were here in the studio, you could actually feel how hot this reaction is. This is a exothermic reaction, meaning that it releases heat. And so that is actually a lot of steam that you saw coming out of the pumpkin. the trick behind this one, and this one is just for you guys at home to know the trick behind it. We're not going to be revealing this during our stage show. I'm going to go ahead and show you how I did it. Now, here on the table, I have a clear beaker. So instead of using the pumpkin, which was a little bit tricky to see through, I actually, before we got started today, just dangled something inside the pumpkin and kind of held it tight with the lid. When I took off the lid, that chemical fell inside, and it actually caused my two ingredients to mix together and formed this chemical reaction, which reduces or releases all that steam. It's super messy, but super fun, which is why you definitely want to check it out here at the Science Center, since you will not want to try this one at home.
No, especially not. You don't, and plus, you don't want to release the genie at home either, because sometimes it's a good genie, sometimes it's it's like Robin Williams and Aladdin, but other times it could be an evil genie too, and you don't want that.
You super don't know, right? It's best to leave the experimentation to us here. We can figure it out next year, right? We can always put those genies back in the pumpkin.
Absolutely. So
we've got one more. We've got one more here. Now, the chemical that I used is actually another really popular chemical experiment that people call elephant toothpaste. Have you heard of that one?
I have, yes.
Oh, yeah. So if you guys are familiar with some of those YouTube channels, people are always breaking the record for how to do the biggest elephant toothpaste. We're not going to do the biggest elephant toothpaste here, but seasonally, we're going to do that reaction right here inside the pumpkin. So the chemical you use for elephant toothpaste is actually hydrogen peroxide. In this pumpkin, though, I've added one extra ingredient before we add in our secret ingredient, which will release it. But this time I added dish soap. So you might be familiar with what's going to happen when I go ahead and pour in our secret ingredient. This time, go ahead and pour it in, stick on our lid, and our pumpkin is slowly going to start oozing that big hot pile of colorful foam. So this reaction is super fun. Like we said, these are all ones that we'll be doing here on the science stage, but these ones are not safe for people to try themselves, which is why we also have hands-on chemistry activities that people can try too. So BASF sponsors kids labs that actually happen every day here at the Science Center that we are open, not just on our free day. So if you're not able to get one of those limited number of free tickets for this Saturday, you can still do a hands-on kids lab activity with us any day for the rest of the year, just by coming to the Michigan Science Center with your family.
And so what are some of those hands-on opportunities that kids will have available to them and families will have available to them when they do attend tomorrow's free day over at the Michigan Science Center from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. They can get, of course, tickets for at mi-sci.org.
Now, after you check out our creepy chemistry show, there are actually going to be 3 different kids labs that we'll have set up around the building. Of Halloween Classic is that we are definitely going to be making slime and teaching you a little bit of the chemistry behind it. You'll get to take that slime home with you thanks to BASF, along with one of these Kid Lab backpacks that has your own set of safety equipment and a lab notebook and a pencil in there. We also have an activity where people are going to solve a science mystery using chemistry. So that one, we have a science mystery set up here in the building, and you're going to help to figure out who did it. So who did the mystery or who committed the mystery by using chemistry or a process called chromatography, investigating color science. The last one is we're also going to be extracting DNA from various fruits and vegetables while we're here too. So we'll be trying to extract pumpkin DNA, strawberry DNA, and apple DNA, all by using chemistry. So those are all ones that you will get to try if you come stop by tomorrow while we are open from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m.
We're joined by Anna Sterner. She is the Director of Programs at the Michigan Science Center. They will be holding their free day at the Science Center tomorrow, Saturday, October 16th, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., made possible with generous support from BASF. But those free tickets that are available, they are going quickly. There is a limited amount. You need to go get them and make reservations in advance, despite the tickets being free, at mi-sci.org. That is mi-sci.org, where you can get tickets for this. And they have programs all throughout the day, 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. So the stage show, when will that be in the day? If people are interested in just going for the stage show, when will that be? And then when are the rest of the more hands-on programs and other programming throughout the day going to be?
The hands-on programs will happen all day long. Those will be set up and they'll be ongoing for the entire time that we're open.
Okay.
And the stage show will happen 3 times throughout the day. So it'll happen at 11:30, 1:30, and 3:30 p.m. So no matter what time you're able to stop by, once you make your reservation, you will get a chance to see that show down on our main stage. Like we said, you can't miss it. Plenty of room for people down there on that stage. And like you said, the tickets are limited, but if you're not able to stop by tomorrow, this stage is, we also reduced admission prices through next Thursday. So you can also experience this show on Sunday if you were to stop by. We'll be open for $12 admission no matter what is your age. So children or adults, it's always going to be $12 through next Thursday, because we know that since we have to limit capacity for safety reasons right now, maybe not everyone will be able to stop by on Saturday while we are open for free. But we want as many people to be able to check out this really cool Halloween themed activity as possible. And we change our programming all the time as well. So if you're not able to stop by this month, stop by next month. We change our kids lab every month throughout the year so that people can actually stop by and try something new every time they visit us. It's also another reason that buying a membership here to the Michigan Science Center for just $99 for your family is a great way to support the Science Center, but also to get to experience all the different things we offer throughout the entire year.
We're joined by Anna Sterner. She is the Michigan Science Center's Director of Programs. The Science Center will be holding its admission-free Community Day tomorrow, Saturday, October 16th, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. At their Michigan Science Center location. You can get those tickets in advance at misci.org. That's mi-sci.org. There are a limited number of those free tickets as well. And just for reference, as Anna had said previously, their hands-on programs will be going on all throughout the day, and then they will have that special stage show. As you can see if you're just tuning in, she's done some demonstrations already of a couple of things that you'll see during those stage shows, which will be at 11:30 a.m., 1:30 p.m., and 3:30 p.m. So plenty of genies will be released, and there will be a whole lot of elephants that will have very clean teeth by the end of the day with all that elephant toothpaste that they're making. So Anna, what other programs outside of course, this Halloween spooktacular that you have over there at the Michigan Science Center, what other programs this fall are available for kids and families and for other people in the public to explore and to have some hands-on experiences with as well at the Michigan Science Center?
Like we said, there's always something new going on, but right now there's actually a really special exhibit up on our traveling exhibit hall. It's our 4th floor. It's called Math Alive. This exhibit is only here until April, and so there's only a limited time that you can stop by and see it, but it is all about math in real life. So it explores the math behind extreme sports like snowboarding or mountain biking, the math behind fashion design or architecture, and there's all sorts of really cool interactive exhibits up there. It is included with general admission, so if you stop by for a field trip or for a visit with your family, we highly recommend it. Like we said, it's only here for a very limited time, and we are really excited to be hosting it before it moves on to its next location.
We're joined by Anna Sterner. She is the Michigan Science Center's Director of Programs with us on the Megacast. Of course, again, their admission-free Community Day, as they get spooky, will be tomorrow, October 16th, 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. Those free tickets are made possible with generous support from BASF. They do encourage costumes as well when you attend tomorrow. But of course, despite the tickets being free, you do need to register online so that they can make sure that they don't go over their allocation of those free tickets through BASF. To do that, go to mi-sci.org. That is mi-sci.org. And Anna, just another couple minutes with you before we'll say goodbye today. Anything else that would be interesting for our audience to know about the free day on October 16th from 10 to 4, or any other programs that are upcoming over at the Michigan Science Center?
Yeah, like we said, so much stuff going on here. If you guys are looking for something to do with your family, or you know an educator who might be looking for a field trip experience, the Michigan Science Center is back open. We had been closed all summer, and so we're really excited to gear up with all the new programs that we've been developing over the last 3 months. So no matter when you stop by, there's going to be activities going on all around the building, some of them hands-on, like engineering in our Spark Lab invention space. Some of them maybe do not try this at home, like some of our stage shows. That's definitely what we're known for here. But there is something exciting for no matter how old you are and no matter when you get to stop by. We definitely hope to see as many people as possible, because it just hasn't been the same being closed all summer without seeing all of the fun groups inside the building and all the kids running around as well.
Well, Anna, we appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us and telling us about all the spooky and the fun activities that will be happening tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the admission-free day over at the Michigan Science Center. We appreciate it. So we're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we'll be headed over to East Lansing. We'll be joined by Dawn Kepler. She is the Collegiate Recovery Community Coordinator at Michigan State University. That is coming up next then at 11:40. I'll be joined by the director and some of the cast members from Clue on stage at the Meadowbrook Theater as well. That is all coming up next. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
We as Michiganders feel connected to this resource in a way that I think is really powerful.
Conservation starts with a caring, committed community.
For me, it's peaceful to have a relationship with the river.
Every single one of us has a role to make sure that those waterways stay safe and healthy, being careful about what goes down the storm drain.
Just even eliminating some of your single-use plastic makes a difference.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
People are getting out to walk and bike in higher numbers. More vulnerable road users and higher speed traffic can be a dangerous combination. Crash severity has increased, so if you're driving, be sure to slow down and look for people. There's no need to speed. If you're biking, ride with traffic. If you're walking, avoid stepping into the road if possible. If you have to walk in the street, walk facing traffic. Learn more at walkbikedrivesafe.org.
We're pleased to be joined by Dawn Kepler, the Collegiate Recovery Community Coordinator at Michigan State University, as students have returned to campus this fall, and it's a much more normal situation at our colleges here in the state of Michigan, the universities here in the state of Michigan, than last fall. Dawn, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me on, and I appreciate your willingness to put a spotlight on our students in recovery in particular, who have had a challenging time over the pandemic and are so incredibly excited to be back on campus.
Yeah, and let's begin by talking about that challenge, because for some of these students, these were issues pre-pandemic, and the pandemic simply just didn't help in the recovery process or in mitigating these issues or beginning that process. For others, the pandemic in some ways or another, either directly because of the isolation and all the effects that comes from that, or from other stressors in their life as a result of the pandemic, was what led them down a road where they needed to then seek those recovery efforts. Now that the students are back on campus, are you seeing a change in the trends that earlier on in the pandemic we were seeing take a really dangerous turn toward more students that were engaging in drug misuse or alcohol misuse?
Yes, and you make a great point about the isolation piece. So that has been a particularly difficult thing for our students to navigate over the pandemic. Even without the pandemic, isolation is the #1 risk factor students report to me that indicates that they are starting to face some challenges. And so the pandemic just made that all the more difficult for students to navigate their recovery. And we've seen a huge change in our student population since returning to campus. Students have had an opportunity to connect with peers, and peer support is so incredibly important in students' recovery and recovery pathway. And so for our students, being able to have weekly on-campus peer support meetings has been huge. To be able to have fun, sober social events and activities is also another big factor in their recovery. And being able to just have that feeling of connection has been huge for our students. The student population in general, not just our students in recovery, reported a 10% increase in stress at Michigan State University, according to our National College Health Assessment. And we also saw this in our students in recovery. And so having students back on campus where they can feel like they're more connected with academic resources in addition to recovery resources has been had a huge impact on our students.
We're joined by Dawn Kepler. She is the Collegiate Recovery Community Coordinator at Michigan State University with us on the Megacast today. And Dawn, over the beginning of this school year, as students have been back on campus, have you noticed that them being back on campus has prompted a greater willingness to seek the recovery that they may need for some of these issues, as opposed to when they were off campus virtually during the pandemic?
Yes, that's a great question. And that has definitely been the case here at Michigan State University. The pandemic was a time of disengagement with the
guidelines being physically distancing. And so we saw students also socially distancing over the pandemic. And since returning to campus, we have increased the number of students who are engaged in our collegiate recovery community services by threefold. And so we have many students who were just disengaged over that time, although doing well in their recovery. We also have many students who are new to recovery who realized over the pandemic that they were facing some challenges with their substance use and are now seeking help, or began seeking help over the pandemic and now have found that they need to connect with other peers who are also navigating recovery as a way to help increase their support and have that safe community where they feel like they can have a real college experience and have fun and still be sober.
We're joined by Dawn Kepler. She is the Collegiate Recovery Community Coordinator at Michigan State University. And Dawn, how do you get students how do you get through to students to about how they need to quickly address the alcohol and drug use, and how quickly that can become a problem if they continue to abuse these substances or misuse these substances and kind of pass it off as not being an issue, and then all of a sudden realize that it is later on down the road?
For our students, many of them have tried to manage their substance use on their own, and that is usually one of the biggest indicators for them that when they aren't able to reduce use or go out and when they drink or use a substance, drinking, for example, just have one drink. And so that's a big indicator for our students and us that they may need some additional supports and some additional help. We also have students that a big indicator for them that they might be challenged by substances or have a substance use disorder potentially is that it affects their relationships, it affects their academics. And so for us, it's really helping students look at how substances are affecting their lives and helping them navigate that. So our approach here at Michigan State University is student-focused, is person-centered, and so we help the students navigate that. We are really fortunate that we have amazing counseling supports for our students navigating substance use disorder, and so students are able to get that counseling assistance. And then when they are at a place where they feel like recovery is the choice for them that makes the most sense if they have a substance use disorder, we have the collegiate recovery community here to offer those individual supports, as well as the group accountability and the peer supports that they get from other students also navigating recovery. On the other end of the spectrum here at Michigan State University, we also have prevention and early intervention supports as well. So we recognize that not all students have a substance use disorder, and at the same time, students might need some help figuring out how to navigate substance use in a way that's safe and to reduce harm. And so that's why we have our National Social Norms campaign here on campus, our DUCK campaign, as we lovingly refer to it, that helps students recognize how to safely engage in substances if that's something that they can do. Obviously, for our students in recovery, they have gone through the process and have identified that they are that they have a substance use disorder, and that recovery is the pathway for them. And from there, we offer an array of services through the collegiate recovery community. In addition to counseling support, we also have weekly peer recovery support meetings. We have fun, sober social events. We offer wellness workshops based on the needs identified by our students in our collegiate recovery community. And we also do community service opportunities as well. In addition to that, with funding and support, amazing support we have through partnerships like the Children's Foundation and the Jamie Daniels Foundation, we're also able to offer live-in support for recovery housing. In Michigan, we are the first on-campus recovery housing being offered and the fourth in the Big Ten. So we're really excited about that opportunity and greatly appreciate the partnerships that have allowed us to have that live-in student position supporting our students in recovery housing.
So Dawn, when students join this program, is it voluntary? Is it on a referral base, or is it a little bit of both?
That is a great question. So it is a little bit of both. So we have a large number that are referred, many from on campus, either through counseling, from the student conduct system. We have students who are referred through our other campus partners, academic units on campus. We also have a large percentage who come to MSU specifically for our collegiate recovery community and our recovery housing. So they do their research before transferring or deciding to apply to MSU, and they come here specifically because we have these supports specific for students in recovery.
We're joined by Dawn Kepler. She's the Collegiate Recovery Community Coordinator at Michigan State University with us on the Megacast. And so, Dawn, let's go a little bit through the process. When somebody is referred to the collegiate recovery community or self-reports, what are the first initial steps that they go through in order to begin those recovery efforts in partnership with the university?
That's a great question. And one of our very first steps is to create a welcoming environment for the student. We recognize that for students navigating recovery, a college campus can be a difficult environment for them. Research has shown that college environments tend to not be supportive of recovery. There tends to be a party culture. And so for us, it's really creating that welcoming, inclusive environment where students can feel safe and supported. So one of the very first steps we have is connecting that student with other students in recovery so they can have a sense of what it looks like to be a student in recovery at MSU, and that you can have a real college experience and have fun and go to have a sober tailgate and go to a football game and be sober. And so for us, it's really helping connect the student to their peers. And then I also meet with that student to help them identify what their specific needs are and how the collegiate recovery community can help support those needs.
We're joined by Dawn Kepler. She is the Collegiate Recovery Community Coordinator at Michigan State University. And so, Dawn, for those that may be hearing this and know someone that they may want to refer to the program, or they themselves want to self-report, what do they need to do in order to make that happen?
So the easiest way to get connected to the collegiate recovery community is just to email or call myself as the Collegiate Recovery Community Coordinator. You can, probably the easiest email to remember would be recovery@msu.edu, and that comes directly to me, and then I help our students get in contact with the other students on campus. And also let them know that every Thursday night we have our CRC All Recovery meeting here on campus in the basement of the Student Services building in the CRC Student Recovery Lounge. And so that's another great way where students are able to not only get support through that peer support meeting, but also meet other students navigating recovery on campus. And so we have students who find us both ways, either find out online about our weekly All Recovery meeting and show up and have the opportunity to meet other students, or who have a chance to talk to myself as well as our CRC student leader first, help them get acclimated with what the CRC is and its services and how we can help support them. And that can sometimes be helpful for students because it can be intimidating walking into a room for your first time and meeting a group of new students. So sometimes the one-on-one approach can be really helpful for our students in recovery, or who are new to recovery in particular.
And Dawn, where can people find more information on this program?
That's a great question. So information can be found on our website. So that is MSU's health promotion website. And you can also go on our social media. So the CRC also has accounts on Instagram, on Twitter, as well as on Facebook.
On Twitter, that is at MSU_recovery for those that are looking for the social media handles that will take them to the website. The website itself is healthpromotion.msu.edu/recovery, or you just go to healthpromotion.msu.edu, and at the top of that page, click on the link that says recovery. We're joined by Dawn Kepler. She's the Collegiate Recovery Community Coordinator at Michigan State University. Dawn, anything else thought that would be important for our audience listening on campus or hearing this from off campus across the state today?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that I think is not as well understood is that students in recovery with appropriate supports in place are some of the most successful students on campus. And so our students have shown this in addition to national research. So 100% of MSU CRC students have cumulative GPAs above a 3.0 and 50% have a 3.5 or higher. And so that is what makes this work and these supports so essential, is that these students do the most amazing work on campus, are the most dedicated to their academics, often working hard at other jobs in the community and giving back through community service. And with the proper supports in place, they have some of the highest GPAs on campus. They go on to graduate and do amazing things. And so I really feel fortunate to work with this population of students in recovery, because they are amazing students and just amazing individuals in general.
Well, Dawn, thanks for joining us and telling us more about this really important program that is available to students on campus at Michigan State for both those that may be in need of recovery and want to take those steps, or others, family members, friends on campus or off campus that may be noticing some unusual behavior that points toward the signs of a substance or alcohol misuse or abuse issue, that they can refer their friend, their loved one to a community that is welcoming and that it will be helpful in their recovery. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. When you don't know where to turn, let 211 be your guiding light.
How can I help you?
Our guides are ready to connect you with the help you need. For help with food, healthcare, mental health, and other resources, call 211 or visit 211.org. 211. Get connected, get help. When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. When you don't know where to turn, let 211 be your guiding light.
How can I help you?
Our guides are ready to connect you with the help you need. For help with food, healthcare, mental health, and other resources, call 211 or visit 211.org. 211. Get connected, get help.
Parents do a lot of worrying. Get your kids caught up on childhood vaccines to protect them from these 14 preventable diseases, and you'll have 14 fewer things to worry about. Vaccines are safe and effective and save lives. So let's get caught up on vaccines and worry about something else. Get the facts at ivaccinate.org.
Welcome back to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Kieft, alongside our studio producer and board operator, Calvin Brown, in our studio in West Bloomfield Township, where we broadcast live out of Civic Center TV each and every day of the work week, Monday through Friday, live from 10 a.m. until 12 noon. You can also find us on a number of other community television and radio stations, as well as on the web in a number of places as well. Learn about all the places you can find us live to tape and on demand by going to our website, civiccentertv.com, and clicking on our Megacast Megacast link. There you'll also find links to our full episodes and each and every one of our interviews on demand as well. With about 20 minutes left in today's show, we're going to cap off this week's editions of the Megacast with the director and many of the cast members from Clue on stage at Meadowbrook Theater. We're pleased to be joined now from left to right by director Tobias Walbert and actors Gregory James, Chris Stinson, and Olivia Ursu with us on the Megacast. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate having you on. So let's start with you, Travis. Tell us a little bit about what people can expect when they go to Meadowbrook Theater to see Clue on stage.
Awesome. Well, Clue on stage is so much fun. If you've ever played the board game, if you've ever seen the movie, or if you know nothing about Clue, it is just such a fun show. It is a murder mystery. There's, we'll say there's some interesting things that happen. We have a group of suspects who all gather together for a dinner party. And let's just say things get a little messy. But don't worry, if you're not into super mysteries or horror or anything like that, it's a very fun show. There's a lot of comic elements to the show. It's very family friendly, and I think people are just going to really enjoy trying to figure out who did the murder, with what, and in which room.
So in this iteration of Clue, being that is a stage play, and each person has a specific character, and they're playing that character on any given night that they're on the stage, it's a little bit different from the board game in that sense. So is there variety to this show and each different performance kind of similar to the board game that I would say would probably be the most recognizable iteration of Clue?
Yeah, I think that when you get actors to embody these characters that we've all played with, there's a bit of variation. There's the characters you know and love that you read about when you played the board game or you read their dossiers and things. But it's so wonderful to have live actors actually embody these characters. They can bring to it not only the humor that is in the show itself that has been written, but also in their mannerisms, the way that they say a line can change nightly sometimes. It shouldn't, but it can. And also I always say that the audience is the final character in the show. So when you add an audience, the rhythm of the show changes just a little bit. The laughter happens in different places, and that encourages the actors or enhances the experience to make it just slightly different. You may end up wanting to see the show a couple times just to see how things end up.
We're joined by the director, Tobias Walbert, and many of the cast members from Clue on Stage over at Meadowbrook Theater. That is running now through November 7th at Meadowbrook Theater. Of course, that is at 378 Meadowbrook Road in Rochester, Michigan, where you can see that show. And so we're joined by Gregory James, Chris Stinson, and Olivia Ursu as well, who are actors in the show. And for each of you, coming back to the stage, is this your first show back acting on stage in person since the pandemic, or have you acted in other shows as well since theaters have started to reopen?
Yeah, it is my first back on stage since the pandemic. It's been almost exactly 2 years, which is pretty crazy. And having our previews this week has really been a joy to be out there in front of people and hearing audience laughter, which there is a lot of in this show. It just felt so alive and just so refreshing after so long a period of time.
Yeah, the last show I was a part of, we got shut down about a week before we were going to open. So yeah, it's been just like Chris said, just about 2 years, doing little things online, filming things in your home or apartment. But yeah, having that energy of the live audience, even being in the room rehearsing is such a different beast. Once you add that last character, like Travis said, that audience, everything just kind of changes, and it feels like things are finally coming back in such a good way.
I was lucky enough to do a production of Grease this summer. So that was my first show back, and it was very emotional. Just coming together with other creative people. It was something that I know we've all really missed. So it was beautiful.
And so for you, Gregory and Chris, having this be your first show back in person, and being that it is such a recognizable show like Clue, but on top of that, that it is that it has such comical elements to it. Does that enhance the experience too? Because comedy is one of those genres, especially in theater, that really garners a great reaction consistently from the audience, and that audience is something you haven't been able as an actor to feed off of, at least not in the traditional way, while you've been acting during the pandemic.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing is, yes, you might get a consistent reaction of people enjoying the show, but the rhythms changing night to night, where the laughs are, how long they're going to be. I mean, you have to be on your toes the whole time. And to your point of, kind of being able to change characters or whatever, I think the great thing about comedy is you kind of have to know everybody else's lines almost as well as yours, so that the rhythms never stop. So, I mean, I would love to play Mr. Green at some point if you want to swap it,
Yeah, we'll try that out. Yeah, I feel tempted to do a British accent sometimes just because I know what he's about to say as Wadsworth. Yeah, no, it's that is the joy of the previews that we're in right now is hearing if the audience thinks certain things are as funny as we think they are, or surprisingly, what gets laughs is a joy, and that live element is something that has been missed, and is so wonderful to be immersed back into. But it is a show that just flies. It's under 90 minutes. It is a whirlwind. So we are kind of shot out of a cannon to do the show right, and then we get all this wonderful feedback from the audience too. So it's a joy to be back and doing a show like this at a time where I think everybody could use a laugh. So yeah.
And Clue on Stage runs now through November 7th at Meadowbrook Theater, where you can see it. It is, of course, based on the popular Hasbro game, as well as the Paramount Pictures movie as well. And again, we're joined by director Travis Walter, as well as cast members Gregory James, Chris Stinson, and Olivia Ursu. And so, Olivia, for you, this is not your first show back in person. As you mentioned earlier, you performed in a production of Grease as well. So for you, having seen two different productions, because every production is different, it's directed differently, the cast has a different dynamic, it's of course a different show with different characters, it can be a different drama, and so on and so forth. For you, having this be your second show back, what have you noticed in your experiences, both through Grease and through Clue on Stage, has changed in the way that performing stage plays as an ensemble cast and just in general in preparation and audition and performance? How has it changed from before the pandemic, if at all?
Well, almost all auditions at this time are taking place online through video submissions. So both jobs that Grease and Clue they were video auditions. So that's pretty different. And I think that's kind of the way that the industry is moving. Probably that's something that will stay. And for Clue, it was interesting. We rehearsed in masks. So we're on Oakland University's campus, and that's part of their protocol is everybody is to be masked inside. And so it was very interesting kind of to try to emote such a physical show without the bottom half of your face. So it was
a lot of eye acting.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're joined by Travis Walter, the director of Clue on Stage at the Meadowbrook Theater, as well as Gregory James, Chris Stinson, and Olivia Ursu with us on the Megacast. If you're just tuning in, you'll be able to see this entire interview on demand on our website at civiccentertv.com/megacast later on in the day. And so, Travis, as a director of this show, coming back to an in-person experience on the stage for your actors and for you as a director, what in your perspective has changed from before the pandemic in the way that you approach directing a show and in the way that actors and crew approach performing a show as well?
Yeah, I would like to start by saying anxiety. The level of anxiety in doing what you do, because a lot of people, they come see a show, they support the theater, it's really wonderful, and they think, oh, these students did such a great job. But because we are a professional theater, these are not students, these are professionals. This is their actual career. So everyone who works at the theater, this is their livelihood. So there's always this fear of, will we be shut down again? What kind of protocols do we need to do to keep everyone safe? And I think in this show in particular, there's a lot of spit takes that, some of them we're like, you know what? In a time of COVID, maybe we shouldn't do spit takes. Let's see if there's something else we can do to make sure that we're not endangering each other. There's also, we follow Actors Equity Association, that's the union for the actors. We follow their guidelines, and so we are testing all of the actors 3 times a week. For COVID. We also have to leave the first row of the audience empty so that there's a distance between the audience and the actors. So again, we're trying to keep the actors safe, we're trying to keep the audience safe, so that hopefully we can all continue to do this all season long. But yeah, I think just the anxiety of having all of those thoughts in the back of your head at the same time while you're trying to put together this really wonderful presentation for the audience, and where normally you would just take things for granted. And now there's all of these other levels of health and safety that you have to take into effect.
We're joined by the director of Clue on Stage at the Meadowbrook Theater, Tobias Walbert, as well as Gregory James, who plays Wadsworth, Chris Stinson, who plays Mr. Green, and Olivia Ursu, who plays Yvette. You can see Clue on Stage at the Meadowbrook Theater now through November 7th. Learn more information by going to MB Theater, that is theater with T-R-E, spelled T-R-E at the end, mbtheater.com, and select Clue on Stage. You can also get tickets by calling the box office at 248-377-3300. Again, that's 248-377-3300. And so, Travis, for those that may be attending, it's going to be different from one theater versus another. What are some of the precautions that are in place, or requirements for precautions in place for the audience attending? Obviously, you mentioned that they won't be in the first couple of rows, but beyond that, are masks required? Is there vaccination proof that's required, and so on?
So at this time, masks are required, and they're required not only to enter the building, but also to be worn during and throughout the show. We do not have a vaccine mandate at this time, but obviously we are, going with all of the different guidances. That could be changing, so we'll always say watch the website. It's right on the front of our website, all the precautions. We do have, the university has updated the HVAC system, so the air exchange and is much better. It's all to the new standards. We also have, there's hand sanitizing stations in the lobby. There's ticket lists, touchless ticketing, I guess. So we can actually scan your tickets now so that you don't have to give them to an usher and then the usher give them back to you, so no one has to touch the same things. The playbills are set out so that people can grab them themselves. You will not be handed one. So we're trying to do all of the things, but definitely masks are the big thing for the audience. Wear your mask and enjoy the show. I always say, thank you for supporting us by coming in, and thank you for continuing to support us by wearing your mask throughout the show.
Yeah, and you can continue to support them by also going to the show now through November 7th at Meadowbrook Theater. You can see Clue on Stage. Again, learn more information by visiting mbtheater.com. Before we go, anything else that would be interesting for us to know or important for us to know that we haven't talked about today from any of the four of you?
Well, I think, and I'm just going to put someone on the spot right now, but because live theater is different every night, because you're trying to remember lines and things like this, and there's previews and rooms moving and all this kind of stuff. Chris actually forgot his character's name last night.
Oh, no.
Didn't you, Chris?
No, forgetting would mean I would never have found it.
You misplaced it. Had to look around.
I would misplace it. When you see the show, you'll see how fast we're moving, and sometimes you just need to take a breath. And that's what it was. It was taking a breath.
But he was amazing. It was very fantastic.
He took a philosophical approach to it. Who really
It was philosophical.
am I? in this show and in life. We're joined by Tobias Walbert, Gregory James, Chris Stinson, and Olivia Ursu from Clue on Stage at Meadowbrook Theater. Again, you can view that show now through November 7th and learn more information and purchase tickets at mbtheater.com. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us. We're going to take one final break when we're on the other side. We'll come back after this short break and talk about all the different places you can find important information about COVID-19 and other top news stories around the state of Michigan from us, as well as where you can find all of our interviews from today's show and others throughout the week. That is coming up next as we wrap up this week's editions of the Megacast.
Thank you so much, guys. Great job.
One of the things you can look for in your friends is a change in behavior.
These can be big changes, they can be small changes in mood, physical appearance.
They may be sleeping less or sleeping more, drinking more, or their eating patterns may be different.
One big change that can be pretty obvious is change in motivation. Do they no longer want to play basketball? Do they no longer want to play video games?
Now that we're spending more time online and in virtual settings, it's really important to pay attention to the language that your friend is using and the words they're using to communicate.
So when we text our friends, are they taking longer amounts of time to respond? Are they not responding at all? You don't have to be an expert to try to recognize these signs. The second that you feel it in your gut and that you're concerned, that's the second to have the conversation and open the door to what might be going on.
Today, it is easier than ever to join Michigan's Organ Donor Registry and help build a bridge of hope for organ, tissue, and eye donation. Just one person can potentially save or help improve the lives of up to 75 people. By joining, your legacy could be the gift of life. Sign up today at michigan.gov/SOS or at any of the more than 145 Secretary of State self-service stations located across Michigan. Be part of Michigan's Bridge of Hope by adding your name to the Organ Donor Registry.
Welcome back to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe here in our studios alongside Calvin Brown, our studio producer and board operator, where we broadcast live from 10 a.m. to 12 noon, Monday through Friday, on a number of different television stations and community radio stations, but we're also online in a number of places as well. All of those places you can find at civiccentertv.com/Megacast. I'd read them off, but we have 3 minutes left in the show, so we don't have time for that, and you can get so much more information than those 3 minutes that I could give you now by going to our website at civiccentertv.com/Megacast. And right next to that, you will also be able to go to civiccentertv.com/coronavirus and find all the important information you need to know about COVID-19 from resources you can trust, from people that, I don't know, actually know what they're talking about when it comes to COVID-19, when it comes to vaccines, when it comes to testing, when it comes to precautionary measures. Instead of Aunt Peggy at home on Facebook throwing articles out there that have no basis in science, but it's fine, you know. It's okay. She's been selling insurance for 30 years. She's a medical expert, right? No, these are medical experts at the CDC, at the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and at the Oakland County Health Division that can lead you to information from reputable resources, from factual resources, from trusted resources, so that you can learn more information yourself about COVID-19, about the vaccines, about precautionary measures, and take the right moves for yourself and for your family as well. That is, again, on civiccentertv.com/coronavirus, where we also post news articles with our top stories about COVID-19 and other important information all across southeastern Michigan and around the Great Lakes state each and every day. That is going to do it for our shows this week. I'd like to give a big thank you to all of our guests today: Tobias Walbert, Gregory James, Chris Stinson, and Olivia Ursu from Meadowbrook Theater's production of Clue on Stage, Dawn Kepler from the Collegiate Recovery Community at Michigan State University, Anna Sterner from the Michigan Science Center, Dr. Tobias Walbert from Henry Ford Health System, and Eric Goldstein, his patient, as well as Rochelle Riley for being with us today. And a big thank you to our crew as well: Larry Nyland, our booking producer, and our Zoom producer, getting each one of these these guests scheduled for our shows each and every day and preparing them to join us on the air from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. Big thank you as well to our studio producer and board operator, Calvin Brown, to my right over here, for being with us each and every day. And thank you to you for tuning in. On Civic Center TV, next it is The Splash with Maddie Mushkin, and on My Michigan TV, it is Steve Lato Live. We'll be back Monday at 10 a.m.